Thank you for attending this very important training session. Stephen and Brett and myself and Adam and a lot of people put a lot of time into this. We keep seeing confusion, errors, whatnot, and the best way to do it is, again, training, checklist, making sure we do everything correct. This is the law. This is how loans have to be done. There is no skating around. There is no, can I go back and do this over? No, this is the law and the way things in the lending environment need to be done and conform to. We didn't make this stuff up. We hate it just as well. It is nothing great. There's still a lot of issues I see within the consumer's eyes. You know, the consumer doesn't even sign the GFE. That's just wrong in my mind. Why it's a document they have to, we as a lender have to be bound to. So please be attentive, take notes. These presentations will be on the intranet. As a company policy going forward too, we will all be having to sign an acknowledgement that we have taken a RESPA course. This is a requirement by the company, the organization, our investors, our QC people, everybody in the lending world needs to make sure and wants to make sure all of our employees have been thoroughly trained on this topic. So with that, Stephen, Brett, all you.
Well, we're going to let Stephen do the crux of the speaking with his gigantic compliance-minded brain. And you know, we want to keep this lively, interactive, engaging. If you have questions to ask, you know, please do so in your GoToMeeting window, and we'll get those answered at certain intervals throughout the presentation. You know, we're not going to hit you over the head with reading everything. We're going to go over the the key trouble spots that we see, and this is going to benefit everybody. So on that note, Mr. Stephen Martin.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in Tennessee on the East Coast. Like Brett said, we're just going to go through a basic overview, hit the trouble spots that we're seeing on a regular basis. The GFE from 2010 has been out for almost 2 years now, so we're able to see with a lot of historical data what the issues are, and obviously there's changes. There was technical amendments to RESPA just this past summer, so those have been integrated into our policy and procedures and our FAQ. And so we'll try to minimize the amount of time that you're spent sleeping today and get this going. All right, GFE and HUD settlement statements. Basically, the most important specific enhancements to our loan originators is that second bullet point. Loan originators are bound to the GFE absent changed circumstances. The GFE needs to be available for at least 10 business days to allow enough time for the borrower to shop for the loan. That's on the third-party settlement fees. You're bound to your loan origination fees in Block 1 at all times. If the borrower does not express an intent to continue with that GFE within those 10 business days, the loan originator is no longer bound to that initial GFE, and you can actually reissue a GFE.
What's a business day, Mr. Martin?
Business day is any day that ICER residential lending is open. So that does not include Saturdays, Sundays, federal holidays. Even though we were open on Veterans Day, it was a federal holiday, so it's obvious it's excluded by law. But day after Thanksgiving is not a federal holiday, but we're closed, so we can't use it as a business day.
Just one of our loan officers, Anthony Finney, kind of has a little trick that he does just to keep it simple. Not only is he incredibly handsome, but he's also quick and he came up with this thing where you just add 15 days, basically. So just go down the calendar 2 weeks and over one, and that should cover you in almost all circumstances. Doesn't really hurt to add a few extra days on. What we're seeing a lot is people are short, and can't be short.
Yeah, you can't just add 10 to the date.
No. So an example today is a great example. Today is November 16th, correct?
Correct.
If we were to go and put a date on our GFE for 10 days, what would it be?
December 2nd.
Yep, it will be December 2nd. X holidays, X the day after Thanksgiving, X all weekends, business days.
One exception to being bound to that initial GFE is new construction. And if you do have a new construction purchase and you know that the closing is going to occur more than 60 days, you can provide a disclosure with that initial GFE stating that anytime up until 60 calendar days, not business days, 60 calendar days prior to closing, that a revised GFE may be issued. If you don't include that disclosure with that initial GFE on new construction, you do not get the opportunity to provide a new GFE. And even though it's new construction, if a home has been issued an occupancy permit prior to that GFE being issued, it's not considered new construction.
You can move in.
RESPA coverage and exemptions. RESPA covers first or second lien types, and if there's a combo loan, you need to provide a GFE on each one of those. Property types, residential 1 to 4 family, condos, co-ops, manufactured homes, PUDs. A loan purpose is purchases, refinances, HELOCs, home improvement loans. So anything that is real estate tied.
What about a 203K streamline?
Yes. RESPA exemptions, you can see we don't really touch upon those. Property equal to or greater than 25 acres, but if we do up to a 40-acre loan on certain areas, we're still going to provide RESPA disclosures. What's the definition of an application under this rule? You need to receive 6 pieces of information: the borrower's name, their social security number, or any type of identification number if they don't have a social security number, gross monthly income, property address, estimated value of the property, and the amount of the loan that they want to receive. And if you receive all 6 pieces of that information, a GFE must be provided within 3 business days of receiving that 6th piece of information.
I'm sure there's an acronym we could use too. Oh, okay. There we go.
You can add. And just to try and make it easier for people to remember, we have pencil, which is property address, estimated value, name of borrowers, credit report, or social security number, income, loan amount.
Very nice.
Now, this is important. I've had some conversations with branches about deleting loan numbers, and this came up in conversation that sometimes there's, these loans that they want me to delete, and I said, well, why do you want me to delete them? They're like, well, they're kind of loans that, we maybe should have disclosed, but we didn't, and, that kind of stuff won't fly, guys. We gotta be very careful about the information we take in, following the rules. If we should have disclosed, we do. We have a loan number associated with that transaction. Of course, there is a way that we can get this information and then not have to disclose, and I believe that's if the borrower cancels. What's the rule, Stephen?
If there is cancellation or denial within 3 days of the application.
However, that is still not a reason to delete a loan number from our system of record. We just need to make sure that we have a notice of adverse action within the 3 days.
Exactly. Yeah, that notice of adverse action is a requirement if that's the case. And if you are trying to do a pre-qual on a borrower and you're not going to have the property address or you're not going to have something else, you just want to pull a credit report, see where it goes, we want you to use lead function out of lender's office, because if you use the loan open, new loan, it's going to create a loan number. So that's something that's going to trigger our auditors to look for a loan specified with that loan number.
Say that again? What do you use?
Well, I'm going to come out with
Function out of lender's office.
and I'm going to do a little reminder how to, when to use the lead function and how to do it. That'll be coming out shortly. So that should help you clean up your pipeline a lot too. You won't have all these loan numbers floating around that shouldn't actually be there.
Prohibited fees and collection of information. Prior to issuing the GFE, the loan originator is prohibited from charging or collecting any fee other than a bona fide credit report fee. So that also means no appraisal orders until the intent to proceed has been received. Additionally, we cannot require the borrower to provide verification of that information that we receive for those 6 pieces of information. So you cannot require W-2s, pay stubs, anything like that before sending out a GFE.
We have a question that popped up.
There's actually quite a few. If you want to open it?
Okay.
Yeah, if you open those up, there's a couple.
Good. Open it up. Get that one there. Yeah. Now we can expand it. Drag the window.
So close.
Oh, it's empty. All right, we're going to take just a minute to answer some questions that have popped up. Oh, audio just went dead. Are we still connected? Hopefully that was an old one. Remember, Washington is assuming that's credit report and social security number equals an application.
Well, that might be a state-specific issue. So it's not down and is not covered by RESPA, so we'll make sure to follow up on that one.
The other question we have is, if the property is a TBD on a purchase, do we need to disclose? Remember your pencil. Sharpen your pencil. We do not have the property address.
Yeah, you do not want to disclose on that. If you do, we are bound to it, and we can be forced to eat a lot of fees.
So from now on, if anyone does that, we're going to call it pulling a casino. FYI.
All right.
That's the question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, settlement service provider lists. We must provide it with a GFE on a separate piece of paper at the time the GFE is issued, and we have to include at least one settlement service provider available in that local market for each type of service. And if a settlement service provider is chosen from our list, the fees charged by that provider are subject to the 10% tolerances. Unfortunately, this includes using a national service provider, such as Chicago Title, First American Title. If you use a local branch and your borrower uses a different branch of that same national provider, you're still going to be subject to those tolerances. I verified that with RESPA and HUD.
And where do they get their list of which title companies?
They can create that themselves.
And they create that under the agent section of lender's office.
That's correct.
Contact it.
Yep, that would be your agent section. And also, I believe Doc Magic has a fatal warning that if you don't provide a title service provider and also a closing agent service provider. So if you just throw something in there just to get it to pass, we'll know.
Yeah, keep in mind too, for the states that really title and escrow are rolled into one provider, that you will need to list both in Doc Magic, or else you will get that fatal.
branch and loan officers will be the ones responsible for issuing the original GFE. And if a change circumstance occurs and we need a new GFE, the branch must issue the revised GFE along with a change of circumstance form to the borrower. That change of circumstance form is going to be required on every revised GFE. And if there is a revised GFE, we will need the documentation of that change of circumstance along with documentation of the date of notification to be submitted. And that's because we need to document the time we received it and the time that we actually sent out that new GFE. And that can never be a PTF condition. It always has to be prior to docs. And that change of circumstance must always be sent to the borrower within 3 business days of the event. All right, there must always be a borrower certification form, has different names and intent to proceed with the application, borrower certification of receipt of GFE, all have the same purpose, and that's to certify that the borrower has received an initial GFE within 3 business days of the application as defined by RESPA. They have confirmed the receipt of the initial GFE. They have expressed their intent to proceed with that loan and the issued GFE. And they also certify that they were not charged any fee prior to the receipt of the GFE except for a bona fide credit report fee. Now here's something that we come across as an issue and the definition of what a changed circumstance is. This is written into RESPA directly, so we have no control over this other than the possible interpretation of what these actually mean. Outside of these, it doesn't meet a changed circumstance. We cannot issue a revised GFE. And if there is a change of circumstance and a revised GFE is needed, only the fees affected by that changed circumstance can actually change and be on that changed circumstance form. Now, what is a changed circumstance? Well, RESPA defines it as an act of God or disaster or other emergency. Information about the borrower or transaction that was relied upon in providing the GFE changes or is found to be inaccurate. Examples, credit report changes. Initially you have a 740, but they have a few lates before you actually get to closing, and it changes the quality of that loan. Amount of the loan changes, borrower requested or required. The value of the property comes down. Those are all valid change of circumstances. New information found out about the borrower transaction that's not relied on in providing the GFE. That could be you find liens on the property, so you have to record releases, so there's an additional recording fee. But if that's the case, only the recording fee can change.
Likewise, the last bullet point, flood. If it's determined in a flood plain, that can change, but you can't change other fees.
Exactly. Is there, like Mike said, you find out that they need flood insurance, the only thing that can change is the part about flood insurance. You can't change anything else. Other change circumstances are requests to change. Now, for example, that can't be we forgot to include a title fee and the borrower is willing to pay for it. That is not a borrower request to change. Other examples, underwriting verification show that monthly income is different than what the borrower stated application, and the difference results in a change in the borrower's eligibility for that loan. Well, if it's material to the loan, then it could be a change circumstance. But if that change in the monthly income has no effect on the quality of that loan, it's not a change circumstance. Lock events. Locking of the rate from float to lock or an expiration of an existing lock. Those are always change circumstances, and they always need to be provided at the time of the lock event to show that revised information. Now, you can change block 2 of the GFE, but the origination charge in block 1 can never change even if you go from float to lock.
Stephen, if let's say I locked the loan, and I wanted to, my title fee and escrow fee are actually lower than I originally disclosed. Can I redisclose that as a change?
No, you cannot, because title and escrow fees are not tied to rate locks. Only thing that's going to change is the credit to or charge for the interest rate chosen in block 2.
What happens if your initial lock is at par, but you lock it in at an 8 discount?
Well, that's allowed.
And that gets spelled out in the boxes.
That's in block 2.
Right, but in the change of circumstance boxes, that originally the loan discount was 0 and now it's equal to $250.
Exactly.
Okay. What happens if you...
And the reason for that change, you would have to put rate from float to lock.
Now, is it supposed to be spelled out actually that the rate was locked at and write in the interest rate, or can you just check the first box?
On the change of circumstance form?
Yes.
You can just check the first box.
Okay.
And make sure it's done within 3 days of that event.
Yes.
If you do a rate lock, you have 3 business days to get that to the borrower. You can't wait to the 4th business day. If the 4th business day happens, we are completely screwed because that is not bound to us then. We have a loan at par then, and we have to close it that way.
So can this be waived if we requested in an email and carbon copy Gary and Ralph?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, Gary Willis and Ralph do not have jurisdiction over RESPA.
Okay.
They're very powerful, but yeah, that's beyond their scope. Try them. Yeah.
Always thinking.
No, yeah, always.
Nor can I, Mike, Venetia.
Well, we know that you guys have a lot.
All right. Since we said what is a change circumstance, what is a change circumstance? None of the information collected by the loan originator for those 6 items can later become the basis for a change circumstance. For example, you disclose a GFE on a TBD. Since you disclosed and now you have a property address, well, you can't change the GFE because you now have a property address. And if you do disclose a GFE for without any of those 6 pieces of information, HUD presumes that you relied on all 6 pieces of information, so you can't later say it wasn't an application. If you disclosed it, it's an app, and you're bound, and you can't base a revision of the GFE on any of that information unless it changes or is found to be inaccurate, and the purpose is to deter the bait and switch methods of the past.
Bait and switch.
Do you have any online questions?
Nope. We're all caught up on questions.
Continued. Market price fluctuations by themselves are not change circumstances, i.e. an appraiser raises its price by $50 after the loan originator has provided a GFE. That increase on that fee is not a change circumstance. Another example, borrower's total assets change but are not keywords materially different from what was stated at application. That's not a change circumstance because it doesn't alter the credit decision. And once again, GFE is issued without a property address, later identification of a property address, never a change circumstance.
So don't do it.
revised GFE timing and record retention requirements. 3-day timing requirement is triggered from the time of receipt of information of a changed circumstance by either lender, underwriter, processor, loan originator, branch manager. Whoever receives that information first, that's when that 3 days is triggered. And if you do not disclose within the 3 business days, your ability to redisclose and change a fee is lost forever. And when a revised GFE is provided to a borrower, the reasons for that change must be always documented. And that documentation we have to keep in the file for a minimum of 36 months after the loan closes. So make sure you keep your documentation and use the change of circumstance form that is lender's office under custom forms. Haven't really seen any issues with the POC items because it never shows up on a GFE anyway. But seller paid charges, and all charges typically paid by the borrower must be disclosed on the GFE regardless of whether the charges will be paid for by the borrower, seller, lender, or any other party. And in cases where you have a seller contracting to pay for all settlement charges, still have to disclose on the GFE because it's typically paid by the borrower. And just as a bullet point, this is a RESPA requirement, which means it's federal law. So it means it's superior to any state law. So even in a jurisdiction where it might be a seller typically pays, but it's not always if it's not required by state law, you still have to disclose it being paid by the borrower originally and be on the GFE. Locked interest rate. If the interest rate is locked, the credit or charge for the interest rate and the adjusted origination charge may not increase from the amount shown on the GFE. Here's just a few examples of what the GFE looks like. Page 1, you have the name of the loan originator, originator address, phone number, email.
And the important one on there is the date of GFE.
Oh, yeah. Important date section. This is actually quite important because we've seen a lot of issues with this part. Line 1, that's the date the interest rate is available through. Must correspond with the lock expiration date at all times. If the loan is floated, you must still list the date there. For example, if a GFE is given on 12/8 and the loan is floated, rate can be made available through 12/8 at 5 p.m. If a revised GFE is given, this date must correspond with the current lock. Line 2, that's the date that all the other settlement charges are available through. And that's at least 10 business days from the one the GFE is provided. No weekends or holidays.
And if it's locked, what goes in box 2?
The date of the original GFE. That date will never change because that's the date that the borrower has to intend to proceed. So once they've intended to proceed with that GFE and loan application, you are no longer given a 10-day expiration on that GFE. So that was a technical amendment to RESPA to clarify that over the summer.
So box 2 date always stays the
So
same.
always keep that the same regardless of your, how many redisclosures you have. You don't need to give another 10 business days with every redisclosure because you're already locked into that GFE.
That's right. You're bound to that GFE.
Numero uno one.
Line 3, if it's floated, use 10 days because you have to have a number there. And if you lock it, put in the lock period. So, for example, 30-day lock, you put in 30 days. The reason we want you to use 10 days is because if your original GFE had 30 days and you actually lock it on a 10 or 15-day lock, you still have to honor that to the borrower for 30 days because that was on your original GFE. And line 4, if the loan is floated, enter a number, minimum 1. And if it's locked, that field must state NA. And in order to get NA through DocMagic, that line is blank, and it will come through the DocMagic disclosures as NA. This is just giving you an example of what's on the GFE regarding a summary of your loan.
A lot of arrows.
A lot of arrows.
A lot of pieces of information. Escrow account information, just make sure that the correct box is checked, yes or no. GFE tolerances. Settlement charges on GFE and HUD1 are placed into 3 distinct categories. First one is charges that cannot increase the settlement, which is going to be origination charge, block 1, or transfer taxes. Line 2, charges that cannot increase by more than 10% at settlement. That's going to be blocks 3 through 7 on your GFE. And there's line 3, charges that increase at settlement. So your hazard insurance, escrow account information, stuff like that. Charges that cannot change. Main one is block 1 origination charge. And our origination charges include the loan origination fee, so that's going to be only on VA loans. Processing, underwriting, and lender's wire are the additional ICER fees that would be included in that charge.
It's pretty easy to tell what's going to be in box 1. It's going to be, as Stephen mentioned, your underwriting fee, your processing fee, and your wire amount. Period. Unless it's a VA loan, there'll be an additional 1% origination on that. Question popped up, I think.
In the section for escrow account, do you check the impounds required when an escrow account is not required, but the borrower chose to have impounds?
Okay, so the question again is, in the question for in the section for escrow account, you check the impounds required when an escrow account is not required, but the borrower chose to have impounds.
Yes.
And that would be yes.
Because that escrow account is included in your pricing on the loan, and it has other effects on your DTI, everything, assets needed, loan amount. So at that point, if the borrower requested escrow accounts, it is required for the continuation of that specific loan.
Correct. It would be a borrower change of circumstance.
Correct? It would be a change of circumstance if a borrower, let's say, originally said no impounds, and then they decided to take impounds. That is a valid change of circumstance.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
So if that happens, I can change my title fee? No. Of course not.
One thing that might change is the block on the GFE regarding your initial escrow deposit, and possibly block 2, which is the adjustment to your origination charge, because it might change your pricing. Additionally, with charges that cannot change, we need to have a fee statement with our GFE that says the payee for the fee. Make sure you enter it in lender's office in DocMagic so that the payee is not lender on third-party fees. I've seen a lot of loans that failed the Fannie Mae high-cost test or the Freddie Mac high-cost test because lender is the payee on fees such as title insurance. And the reason being is there are certain exceptions to what's included on a Fannie Mae 5% high-cost test for actual services provided. So if you put title insurance and it's paid to the lender, it's included in the test. If you put it to who's actually being paid, such as the title insurance company on title insurance, it's an actual service, and it's no longer included in that 5% cost. So make sure you include the correct payee.
That's crazy.
What do you do if the loan officer wants to pay for some of the borrower's fees out of the credit?
That'll be a lump sum.
And where do they show that?
There you go. As far as the GFE is concerned, all fees are shown as borrower-paid costs. That's all taken care of, through other means. But just talking about the GFE, no seller credits are being shown on it.
Except the adjusted origination charge may be a negative number. So that's when it gets applied with the lender or the credit for interest rate chosen. So that's the only time you'll ever see any type of credit on a GFE. Now that the fee has to be on there, the service provided for the fee, so example, title insurance, lender's title insurance to be specific, owner's title insurance to be specific, percentage of the loan amount if applicable, only going to be applicable on VA loans and unless it's a discount or credit, location of the fee and the good faith estimates. Examples, block 1, block 2, block 4, block 7. Just a quick example of block 2. Box 1 is checked when the pricing is exactly par. Box 2 is used when pricing is above par. Box 3 is used when pricing is below par, so discount points. In block 2, only one selection can be made. And just as an FYI, due to rate changes, a loan that was initially disclosed as a float with a discount may change to a credit for the interest rate chosen at the time of lock, or vice versa. So be sure that the correct selection is made at the time of revision. Just a quick example of what an adjusted origination charge looks like at par. You have $2,500 origination charges, no adjustment. Origination charges stay the same. Here's an example of discount points. We have $2,500 origination charge, $1,000 discount. So we have an adjusted origination charge for line A, $3,500. Charges that cannot increase by more than 10% at settlement. There are certain fees and charges that are subject to a 10% tolerance, and those are the items that are listed through blocks 3 and 7. So we'll go through those blocks pretty quickly here. Block 3, required services that we select. Examples, appraisal fee, credit report fee, upfront mortgage insurance premiums. Very important.
Very important. That shows up in that section.
VA funding fee, USDA guarantee fee, all in block 3. Block 4, title services and lender's title insurance. Poor grammar. Lender's title insurance, title search fees, title exam fees, endorsements, delivery fees, notary fees, and settlement fees. Notice owner's title insurance goes into block 5. And originators should always quote this fee for a basic owner's title insurance policy on every purchase transaction even if the seller or any other party is paying for it.
Yeah, even if I'm paying for it.
Yeah.
It has to be disclosed on block 5.
And I will pay for it.
Oh, that's an open offer.
And it's recorded, so now it's open to everyone.
Question. Is it really a big deal where I put, like, let's say I put the VA funding fee, I accidentally put that in the wrong box, for example. Is that a big deal?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Because
Okay.
because it's required to be in the correct block according to RESPA policy.
Okay. So it's very important to make sure that we don't just helter-skelter throw fees in.
Right. Well, and the other reason being, let's say, for example, you took that VA funding fee and you accidentally put it in the owner's title policy on a refi.
Well,
Right.
Well, we'll go into a little more detail now with the FAQ at the very end.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
the thing is, the block's categorized type of fee
Okay.
it is for, and a funding fee is something that we require as a lender for that loan. So it's no longer even showing up to the borrower as we requiring it. It's looking at a settlement charge provided by another third party that we may or may not require.
Okay.
So at that point, it doesn't even be categorized for the consumer.
Okay.
We know it's still the same. Consumer doesn't. And these laws are all about consumer protection.
Okay. The devil is in the details.
Yep. Block 6, required services that you can shop for. Those are included in the 10% tolerance. Block 7, government recording charges. That's going to be recording charges for the deed, the mortgage, transfer deeds, lien releases, anything that's a government recording fee gets charged there. That does not include a fee that escrow or title company might charge for the service of recording. If that is what title or escrow requires as an additional service fee, but not charged by the county, that goes in block 4. Block 8, transfer taxes. Seen a lot of issues with these still. Transfer taxes must be correct at the time the GFE is provided. So they have to be correct at the very beginning. And there are only 2 allowable justifications for an increase on transfer fees. First one is an increase in sales price or loan amount, and the transfer tax rate is based on the increasing amount. So that means if the transfer tax rate jurisdiction is based on your sales price and your sales price increases, then it's justified with a change of circumstance to increase that transfer tax fee, but it has to be according to the same tax rate. So if you forgot a decimal or forgot you accidentally put 0.25% and it's supposed to be 1.25%, your new one can automatically be 1.25%. You can't correct that much. Additionally, if there is an increase in the sales price or there's an increase on your, if your tax rate is based on your sales price and your loan amount increases, that's not a justification for the transfer tax to increase because that tax is not based on the loan amount. But in jurisdictions where tax is based on loan amount, then it is a change of circumstance. So it all depends on what your tax rate is tied to. The other allowable justification is if the tax rate actually increases after the initial GFE is disclosed. And once again, if a revised GFE is provided, change in circumstance must be documented.
So I would assume in that case we would have to have proof from the municipality or whomever that the tax rate did increase.
And on what date. And then we'll have to know, since tax rate did increase, you have to do it within 3 business days.
I like it.
These are the charges that can change at the time of settlement. Block 9 for escrow account information. Block 10 is daily interest charges, so that's going to change depending on how many days of interest is needed or your rate or loan amount. Block 11 is for homeowners insurance and any other type of insurance. Trade-off table, the main thing about this is the first column has to be completed. The loan in this GFE automatically populates in our LOS system, in our DocMagic system, so you don't really have to worry about it unless the borrower requests it. And if the borrower requests that the trade-off table is completed, then you must complete the entire table for them.
Now, there is no way within DocMagic, however, to do that, correct, Stephen? So that would be something that they would have to, that originators would have to fill out after the fact?
Actually, I think you could select it as a form,
Okay.
as an additional form.
Beautiful.
I'll select you as a form.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It doesn't even make any sense.
Nice. HUD-1 settlement statement, charges paid for by the seller are going to be on the seller's side. This is basically breaking it down how it should appear based on who pays for the charge. No-cost loans. Main point of this slide here is to make sure that you are aware of what the total charges for the loan is going to be if you try to do a no-cost loan, primarily because you'll have to disclose on Block 2, adjustment to the origination charges, what their credit is, and if that credit exceeds the amount of actual settlement charges or other fees, it has to be used to pay for additional closing costs not included in the GFE, such as HOA, taxes, something like that. Reduce the principal balance, reduce interest rate, or provide cash back to the borrower. Problem with that is it's not always allowed depending on the loan program. And in any circumstance, the amount of credit given to the borrower may never be reduced to avoid cash back to the borrower. So once it's disclosed, it has to be used. This page just gives you an example of what the HUD-1's going to look like, where the origination charges go, credit or charge for the interest rate is going to be on block or line 802. And you'll see that appraisal fee, credit report fees, tax service fees, and flood certs are broken out to their own lines.
And the HUD now, maps everything to the corresponding line on the GFE, so it's very easy to follow and compare versus your GFE.
900 series on the HUD-1. It's going to be for your interest, your mortgage insurance premiums, or your VA funding fee or your USDA guarantee fee, homeowners insurance, or property taxes that are due. Those items are going to be in the 900 series. Series is going to be reserves, deposits with lenders, so that's going to be initial deposits of your escrow accounts. $1,100 series, that's going to be your title charges, including settlement fees, owner's title insurance, and lender's title insurance. Owners and lenders' title insurance get their own separate lines. $1,100 series. The HUD has to list the policy limits for the different types of title insurances. So, as you know, we have to make sure that it covers our loan amount on the lender's title policy. And the owner's title policy, they usually want to, not as a lender required, but the borrower would want to usually have that as the sales price of their loan.
Do you have a favorite series, Stephen?
They're not on this HUD-1 series. that's just going to be your recording charges and transfer taxes, basically your government charges. $1,300 series is for other required services, such as pest inspections, surveys. Comparison of the GFE and HUD-1, this is going to be important, especially for closers. This is where it breaks down what was originally disclosed on the GFE compared to what's actually on the HUD. So this is where we'll be able to see where we're at the tolerance, whether it's the fees that cannot change, the 10% tolerance fees, or the fees that can increase. And one important thing to note here is on the good faith estimate column, only the fees that were actually charged and disclosed can be included in there. So for example, we disclose an owner's title policy charge on a refinance. So we don't need an owner's title policy, but we will need a lender's title policy, and we forgot to do the lender's title policy by accident. Well, when it comes to the comparison of the GFE, because we didn't actually use that owner's title policy, it's not going to be included in the comparison. So that amount of money is no longer used to calculate your tolerance.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
It's like it never happened.
Yep. So be very careful where you actually put your fees.
Yeah, I'm not going to cover that one.
Loan term section, very similar to what's on the GFE. It just breaks down what the terms of the loan are. This is more for the closers and processors, just how the POC items are going to show up on a HUD-1. They're not going to be included in the actual columns of charges. They're going to be in the actual line descriptions. So in this case, on line 804, the appraisal fee total was $500. $200 is getting paid at the time of settlement. $300 was paid probably at the door, and I'm going to presume FHA. Right to cure and tolerance violations, no one wants to talk about, but it's very important. Inadvertent or technical errors on the HUD-1 can be cured by providing a revised HUD-1 to the borrower within 30 calendar days after settlement. Calendar days, not business days, so we have a shorter period of time. A decrease in charges is never considered a violation, and a revised settlement statement needs to be sent to the borrower with reimbursement. Here's kind of the mechanics of the types of tolerance violations. First one is transfer taxes, which is a zero tolerance. So we'll always have to meet that increase. So here we have to pay $200 to meet the tolerance difference, because you can see that the total is $1,000. $800 shows what was disclosed, so we have to pay $200 POC. Now, if it's a credit for the charges, not a credit, but a cure for tolerance violation for the ones that can increase by 10%, that's going to go on the first page of the HUD, 200 section. And can you exit and go to the FAQ?
Absolutely. We're going to switch presentations here real quick, so if you have any questions, pop them in the box. And I believe we had that right there.
One quick question. Sure. I can do it. What about the borrower's taxes, like the first half, like when they're requiring them to be paid? What section does that go under? And
It doesn't go on the GFE.
it doesn't go on GFE at all?
Nope.
Okay, so it doesn't show. Like, if the MLO wants to be as accurate as possible and disclose the cost of the bar, they don't. It doesn't get mapped to the GFE.
It does not get mapped to the GFE.
But we put it in lender's
They'll still put it in the lender's office, so that way your initial fees worksheet would be correct. If you want to use it, not a required item, but that'll be correct. And then additionally, your details of transaction on your 1003 will be correct. That's why you want to put it in there. But it's not going to be mapped to your GFE at all.
And in order for that to happen, they have to put it in what spot, like in lender's office, so that it doesn't end up getting mapped to the GFE.
It's going to be in the same section where your hazard insurance premium goes. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's a section on your GFE screen, and then you'll see where each fee is mapped to. It's going to tell you like A1, B5, whatever.
Or NA.
And NA would be something that is not mapped to the GFE.
It has to be mapped NA. Yeah.
And in case you're worried, we're not going to be reading through this word for word. We're just going to go through the high points. Mainly right here. Instead of giving the GFE or other documents to the borrowers by hand delivery or mail, loan originator may deliver the GFE to the loan applicant by fax, email, or other electronic delivery method, but only if the applicant consents and the other specific requirements for consumer disclosures under the Electronic Signatures in Global and National Commerce Act, the e-Sign Act, are met. The applicant is considered to have received a mail GFE 3 calendar days after mailing, not including Sundays and federal legal holidays. So just remember that if it's mailed through snail mail, the time of receipt is always going to be 3 calendar days, not including Sunday and federal legal holidays. And once again, loan originator is prohibited from requiring any type of supplemental documentation to verify information for those 6 pieces of information before the GFE is sent out. So the information is given but not verified, still counts as an application. Important date section on GFE, since it is a common question. Here's a breakdown of what we're looking for based on the timing of the loan. Important date section, line 1, interest rate for the GFE is available through X. If it's floating, we want the time of issuance, the date of the GFE. If it's locked, we want 12 o'clock noon, your time zone, on the locked expiration date. Line 2, the estimate for all other settlement charges available through X. Always has to be 10 business days after date of GFE. Whether it's floating, locked, revised, it's always going to be from that initial GFE. After you lock your interest rate, line 3, if it's floating, your time period is going to be 10 days. If it's locked, lock period of 10, 30, 45, depending on what your actual lock period is. Line 4, you must lock the interest rate at least X days before settlement. If it's floating, use 1 as the minimum. If it's locked, NA. Just going over some different sections here. A lot of it is just going over the exact same stuff that we went over in this PowerPoint.
Is that a question, Brent?
Yeah, we do have a question. Can we get an email with this presentation sent to us? And actually, no, we were hoping everybody was taking notes. So, sorry.
Por supuesto que sí, Estela.
No, of course, yes. We will send an email to follow, and we're going to send it to everybody, whether they were on the call or not. And it will contain 4 items. It will contain a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that Mr. Martin has graced us with, a copy of this policy and procedures manual that we are viewing right now, and then a couple of other additional items of fun, one of which is going to be a MLO submission/compliance checklist to make sure that we are definitely reviewing these GFEs as they go out, and a few other little compliance items. And then also, the piece de resistance, thank you, that's French, is a short test, oh yes, with an acknowledgement that you have received, read, and understand all of these fun policies.
With those, all the results back, we'll pick a couple winners, have a couple fun prizes and everything. This is a very important topic for a mortgage company these days. It has to be correct. We all have to be on the same page. It just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We just have to do it right.
Yeah, I mean, these regulations have been in effect for, nearly 2 years now, so really the errors and the confusion should be down to a minimum. So, we want to make sure everybody has the tools to, thoroughly understand the policy so that we are, staying above the board. We have another...
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Oh, it's a comment. Should we...
Okay. No, it's from Finney. Don't worry about it.
Oh.
Also, guys, just
discuss later.
to help with, in the wise words of Mary Poppins, spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Along with all this paperwork that we're sending you, the presentation, the acknowledgement, all that good stuff, we may include a couple pictures of me on a horse. So.
Worried now.
All right, back to a serious note so we can finish wasting your time. Owner's title policy.
What is she? That's a D.
Kenny wants to know, can we elaborate on how a seller's excise tax is handled on the GFE?
Depends on your jurisdiction. If it's paid by the seller, always, as a requirement by law, then it's not going to be disclosed on the GFE.
But if it's typical that the borrower would pay for it, even if it's not being paid for by the borrower, it would appear.
It would appear. Adam, will your picture be poster size?
Of course.
Of course.
All right, let's finish up.
All right. Owner's title insurance. Once again, enter the cost for owner's title insurance on the owner's title insurance line. Even if it's paid by seller, it must be included. Block 8, transfer taxes. The figure must be accurate. There is absolutely no tolerance for any increase unless one of those two earlier mentioned justifications occur. Purchase price or tax rate increases. Your transfer taxes include city or county state. City or county tax stamps, your state tax stamps, transfer taxes, mortgage tax, state intangible tax, or registration tax. Obviously, jurisdiction dependent. All taxes are intangible. Here's the general policies. I'm just going to hit upon the high points or low points, depending on how you look at it. A loan originator may not refuse to issue a GFE based on a borrower's refusal to acknowledge the receipt. So even if the borrower says they don't want to do it and they haven't actually withdrawn, you still have to do the disclosures within 3 business days of your application. If a borrower acknowledges receipt of a GFE, the acknowledgement by itself is not acceptance of the GFE. We must receive a signed intent to proceed.
Another big no-no that we've seen on a few loans is borrowers signing the GFE.
Yeah.
Do not
have that on there.
Signature lines are a big no-no. Nothing can be added, deleted to the GFE. Cannot be modified. It's a set form created by government entity to confuse the consumers. So we cannot, we can't try to help them understand it any more than what the government allows us to. All charges typically paid by the borrower must be disclosed on the GFE, even if the seller or another third party will be paying the charge, including owner's policies or transfer taxes on any applicable loan. Do not complete a GFE on TBD transactions, as it limits the ability to revise the GFE. And no fee other than a credit report fee can be collected prior to issuing the GFE and obtaining the borrower's intent to proceed. Likewise, one thing that does mesh well, MDIA restricts imposing a fee on the borrower until after receipt of the till. So at least that part of those two laws work well. Redisclosure of the GFE is only required when it adversely affects the borrower, and/or a change of circumstance requires redisclosure, and/or a loan is being locked, relocked, or extended. And even though we had some Q&As before, these have been updated and added to. Once again, just because it really needs to be reiterated, what is a business day for purposes of the timing required for delivery of the GFE or revised GFE under Reg X? Business day as defined by ICER residential lending is Monday through Friday, not including Saturday, Sunday, or federal holidays. Can the borrower consent to the imposition of additional fees or agree to proceed with the loan prior to the receipt of the GFE? No. Additional fees may not be collected or imposed until the LO has confirmed that the borrower has received the GFE and intends to proceed with the transaction. Change circumstances. If a fee changes that is within the 10% tolerance, do we need to redisclose? A fee increase on its own is not a valid change of circumstance, and therefore a revised GFE cannot be issued. A revised GFE can only be issued if there is a valid change of circumstance and the fee change is directly linked to the change of circumstance. If the fee increase does not tie into a valid change of circumstance and no GFE is issued, however, NDI requirements may still require redisclosure of the till if your APR is off more than an eighth. When a change circumstance occurs, what triggers the 3 business day clock? The date of receipt of the information that is sufficient to establish the change circumstance triggers the redisclosure clock and must match the documentation on file to support the change.
What'd you do?
Did you do Steve Martin? What? I don't know. No, it just started going up. That's where I wanted it to go. All right, if the borrower decides to buy down a rate after the loan is locked, can we redisclose new points to the borrower? Yes. This would be a borrower-requested change and would constitute a change circumstance. The change in points must be redisclosed within 3 business days of the changed circumstance. If a changed circumstance occurs resulting in an increase in fees associated with the change and the LO is unable to redisclose within 3 business days, is a fee increase allowed? No, never allowed. If the loan originator does not redisclose within 3 business days of becoming aware of the changed circumstance, fees associated with that changed circumstance can never increase.
As Mike so eloquently put it, we're screwed. Yep.
Another one, loan program changes from a fixed to an ARM, is that considered a change circumstance? Yes. However, only the fees that can change are the fees that are affected by the change in loan program.
Like lowering title fees and stuff like that, right?
Never.
Okay.
Actually, you might have a difference on your recording fee because of the ARM writer.
Ooh, arm writer.
But that's the only thing that can't change.
Right.
Yeah.
And remember, too, that if your fees are going down, it's a benefit to the borrower, so there's not a need for a redisclosure in those cases, if that's, all that's happening.
Got it.
My loan went from float to lock, and I did not disclose within 3 business days. Can I still send my revised GFE?
No.
No, the loan is now in violation of RESPA and cannot be cured by a subsequent revised GFE. The loan originator has now lost the ability to disclose discount points, if applicable, and the borrower will receive the rate at par.
And you will have a very grumpy branch manager because the cost of the lock is going to come from somewhere. So,
And not from me.
Transfer tax is incorrect. How do I execute the cost to cure?
Zero tolerance.
0 tolerance on transfer taxes. Any increase will be cured at time of settlement. Here's an easy one. For FHA loans, where will the upfront MIP be listed on the GFE?
3.
Block 3, always. Is the loan originator required to redisclose if fees decrease? No, and the loan cannot be redisclosed unless there's a valid change of circumstance. Can I lower the origination charge at a later date? The borrower is hesitant to move forward. Before, we could. But now, existing MLO comp rules limit an originator's ability to make these adjustments. Any adjustment must be made through the use of the CDF and applied to the credit or charge for interest rate chosen.
scroll her down.
My borrowers want to float the loan at the time of application, and there will be a credit or charge. Should I disclose at par?
This is a big one.
No, the loan must be disclosed with the current pricing that is available at the time the GFE is issued. Main reason with this is we need to, we can document what market prices are at the time of GFE and the time of actual lock. And last thing we want to be hit with is a bait and switch.
Right.
This only benefits yourself as a loan officer to give them an accurate description of the discount or the credit at the time you are doing the GFE. You do not want to be in a situation where you have it at par, and then when you lock the loan, you are at a 3-point discount.
Unless the market has moved by that amount, but then we could document that. But
That's a documented change.
right.
It's best to be as accurate as you can up front.
Next question. I accidentally disclosed the lender's title policy as the owner's title policy on a refinance. Will we still be okay at the time of settlement because we are allowed a 10% tolerance for blocks 3 through 7? No. The only charges that are allowed to be included in the GFE comparison chart on the HUD-1 are fees actually charged or services performed. In this instance, because the owner's title policy was not actually charged, it would not be included in the GFE column of the comparison chart. Therefore, any comparison from the HUD-1 will be made to the total of blocks 3 through 7 without the owner's title policy included, which I can guarantee at that point you're going to have a tolerance violation. And last question on our FAQ, what is the minimum number of service providers that must be listed for each? And I emphasize each shoppable surface.
No.
At least one.
Okay, we have a question that has popped up. When disclosing a non-owner loan, there is always a hit to fee of 1 3/4 to 3%. How and where do I show this fee when delivering a floating GFE? You will do it the same way you're going to net out your pricing, so you're going to have, after that adjustment, either a net credit or a net discount. So you will show the appropriate figure on your GFE.
Yeah, it's going to be in block 2, adjustment to your origination charges.
Most likely a discount with this non-owner hit.
Yeah, and that goes for any price adjustments that are on your rate sheet. You're just going to work out your final price, including those hits.
Again, if we have any in the pipe at par, there's no reason to go and panic and change them all. This is a new company policy we're pushing forward and getting everybody in line with, because it only benefits yourself going forward and us.
Any other questions? Please type away.
We'll hang out for a few minutes.
This is probably where we should sing, right?
Good thing.
So a good question would be, if my borrower wants to pay his upfront MIP as cash, upfront, FHA loan, we did not disclose it then on a GFE in block 3, because it's not it should be there as cash, or it should be not there on your GFE.
Still needs to be included on the GFE because it is still a charge to the borrower. The only difference is if the borrower is paying for his upfront MIP in cash on an FHA loan, you're no longer able to finance it into the loan. So your base loan amount is your total loan amount.
Now my borrower says, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I don't have the money. We have a valid change circumstances based on a borrower request.
And the loan amount change.
Correct.
All right, here's kind of a dumb question, but let's say, for example, our initial GFE is disclosed with the full upfront MIP showing dollars and cents, and then a subsequent redisclosure is broken down to show the upfront MIP paid in cash versus the upfront MIP financed into the loan. Since it's all essentially the same fee, can that be tweaked?
Not sure I comprehend because...
So, for example, let's say we have
either way, the upfront MIP is just going to be upfront MIP with a charge.
Yeah, it's not going to say.
It's not going to show.
It will, though. It does on Doc Magic. It'll break it down between the portion that's paid in cash and the portion
The little
that's paid.
cents part, nickel, dime.
Yeah, or your cents part is if there's an accident, remember that it's in block 3, so you are subject to a 10% tolerance variation.
Okay.
So I seriously doubt 30 cents is ever going to put you over if everything else is disclosed correctly.
I would doubt that, too.
I'm going to have to think that it will happen.
Really? Very likely.
Now, we didn't do it on the RESPA policy, but Stephen, can you go real quick? When is there a waiting period time frame when a fee changes and the loan changes dramatically more than an eighth until? What's the period there?
It's always going to be 3 days.
3 days.
Yes.
Yes.
But different calculations for business days on MDIA versus RESPA. So you can actually start, the first day is the next business day after receipt of the new till, not after you send it, but receipt. So if you mail a new till, remember that the presumption is the borrower received it 3 calendar days, not including Sundays or federal holidays, after you mailed it.
So 3 calendar
Mailed
and then 3 business in addition.
And then 3 business days after that.
Like a combo deal.
Yeah, so if you mail a new till, you're looking at a 7-day waiting period. If you hand deliver, fax, email securely under the e-Sign Act, anything where it's immediate delivery and you can document when they received it, then they have 3 business days from that definition. And that is an increase or decrease of an 8 on the till.
So it's important to get those disclosures out quickly instead of that time I need to draw down loan documents in front of this loan.
Yeah, because you just give yourself a 3-day waiting period.
Yes, and again, we do not have the ability here at a company level to waive any of these policies. I mean, this is federal policy.
So, short of emailing Obama, we're kind of stuck with the rules.
No, I might actually do it if you
commit a vote to it. Any questions? Hey guys, feel free. If you got anything else, please type away. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap this up here.
Yeah, we do appreciate everybody. It looks like most everybody that was on the call from the onset is still on the call, so we really appreciate everybody's attendance, your attention, and just being engaged throughout the process. So we will send a follow-up email with all of these little goodies, and of course, if you have any questions for us, we're here for you.
Yep, paper, always here.
For compliance.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.